Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Next day on November 25th. On that very day, Grant's plan concentrated on the attack by Sherman against Bragg's right flank at Tunnel Hill. He gave his supporting role to Thomas. He wrote him as follows: I have instructed Sherman to advance as soon as it is light in the morning, and your attack, which will be simultaneous, will be in cooperation. Your command will either carry the rifle pits and ridge directly in front of them or move to the left as the presence of the enemy may require.
Oh.
Go.
You ain't kidding. Grant had no particular expectation for Hooker other than to...
I don't think these guys like each other, to be
Right.
honest.
Other than Grant had no particular expectation for Hooker other than to divert Bragg's attention by continued demonstrations on Lookout Mountain, which had been evacuated by the old Ribs. However, Thomas wanted support on his flank and called Hooker to cross the valley and demonstrate against Bragg's left flank directly at the Rossville Gap.
They're like, Hooker, we don't want you to actually do anything. We just want you to demonstrate stuff.
Right, can you do that stuff, bud?
Well, in a letter to his brother, Sherman wrote, the whole philosophy of the battle was that I should get by a dash, a position on the extremity of the Missionary Ridge from which the enemy should be forced to drive me,
Right.
or allow his depot at Chickamauga Station to be in danger. I expected Bragg to attack me at daylight, but he did not.
Uh-oh.
And to bring matters to a crisis quickly, for the sake of Burnside in East Tennessee, Grant ordered me to assume the offensive.
Uh-oh. Got to, right?
Well, Sherman had about 16,600 men in the three divisions of Brigadier Generals Morgan Lewis Smith, John E. Smith, and his foster brother and brother-in-law at the same time, Hugh Boyle Ewing.
Oh.
Damn, so married his sister and was his foster brother. Okay.
Oh, shit.
And three regiments of Colonel Adolphus Bushbeck's brigade from the 11th Corps. Sherman also had Jefferson C. Davis's division guarding his rear.
Fantastic. Around 10 o'clock in that morning, Grant dispatched the rest of Howard's 11th Corps from Thomas to Scheumann. Hardee, from the old Reb side, had about 9,000 Confederates in the divisions of Claiborne and Walker, with another 4,000 soon to arrive in Stevenson's division. Hardee's left, Benjamin F. Chetham's decimated division, occupied the ridge between Thomas and Sherman's front. I don't know if you want that there.
No.
However, at dawn, when Sherman was supposed to attack, he was opposed by just 3 small brigades under Claiborne, about 4,000 men, and only the Texas Brigade of Brigadier General James A. Smith was actually positioned on Tunnel Hill. But, seemingly unnerved by his incoherent positioning, Sherman delayed.
Incorrect.
Incoherent. But seemingly unnerved by his incorrect position, Sherman delayed until about 9 o'clock a.m.
Like, these guys are not big enough for me to be fighting right now.
But they are Texans, so
Right.
everything's bigger in Texas.
He selected just 2 brigades from Ewan's division to attack. Brigadier General John Corse would approach from the north, Colonel John M. Loomis from the northwest, across the open fields between the railroads. Sherman ordered Corse's brigade with a detachment from Joseph A.J. Lightburn's brigade to attack along the narrow length of Tunnel Hill. Colonel John M. Loomis's brigade...
Is that Billy's great uncle?
Could be. Isn't the doctor named Loomis in Halloween?
Shit.
All right. He was supported by Bushbeck, and he would move across the open fields on the west of the ridge, while Brigadier General Giles Alexander Smith's brigade would move through the valley on the east side of the ridge. The brigades of Brigadier General Charles L. Matthews and Colonel Greenberry Rom were held in reserve to follow up any successful attack.
Okay.
The brigades of Colonels Joseph Cockrell and Jesse I. Alexander would hold the heights seized the day before.
Fantastic. Corse drove off the old Reb skirmish line and seized some half-built defensive works at the north end of the Tunnel Hill. Continuing over the crest of the hill, Corse charged Claiborne's main position, but was repulsed. After several attempts, old Scheumann, he gave up on attacking from Corse's position, and the fighting shifted to the west side of the ridge. Old Loomis from the old Union side had advanced to the railroad in front of the ridge, where he skirmished with Walker's division. Bushbeck, followed by Matthews and then Rom, were sent up to the west slope of Tunnel Hill between Loomis and Corse. Claiborne's salient began to feel the pressure, and it came close to breaking. Ooh, close, but did it.
Hardee fed in reinforcements from Stevenson's division, and Claiborne ordered a general counterattack. Charging down the hill at 4 p.m., the Confederates routed Sherman's men, who were too tired and low on ammunition to resist, and captured numerous Federal prisoners.
Oh, shit, dude. That could have been avoided.
Sherman's attack came to a halt, as you would think. A tactical failure in which he lost almost 2,000 casualties.
Damn.
But committed only a fraction of his available force in a direct assault on a strong position.
Right.
So he's like, those guys, well, they're expendable. He did that rather than attempting to outflank Bragg. Military historian David Eicher called this Sherman's worst experience as a commander, first miscalculating the terrain and then stumbling through a prolonged, unsuccessful, and needless attack.
Yeah, that was kind of funky, but he had a plan there, I believe, right? You would think there had to be something.
Oh, he'll redeem himself, don't worry. I think.
Sherman? I think he does good.
Well, Sherman does the march to the Atlantic later on in 1864 or something like that, but here he does, though, I think. On the other hand, Stephen E. Woodworth judged that Claiborne was in his fine form today, deftly shifting troops around his hilltop position and skillfully judging when and where to launch limited counterattacks, often leading them himself.
Oh, fantastic.
For him.
Right. An alternative view has been expressed by B.H. Liddell Hart, who contends that Sherman did not commit his entire force because he was expecting Bragg to attack him to dislodge the Union force from threatening position. He gave the Confederates several hours in which to attack them, and when he saw that they showed no signs of accepting the invitation, he made it more pressed by launching 3 brigades against their position. But his real desire is unmistakably established by the fact that he kept 3 brigades to hold his own ridge, with 5 more in reserve behind him.
He was trying to goad them out to come out and attack them.
Right.
Around 2:30 p.m., Grant spoke with Brigadier General Thomas J. Wood, his classmate from West Point. He said, General Sherman seems to be having a hard time. It seems as if we ought to go help him. He decided to send Woods's and Major General Philip Sheridan's divisions against the Confederate rifle pits at the base of the ridge, hoping to concern Bragg and relieve the pressure on the other Sherman. Grant suggested this idea to Thomas, but personal relations between the two generals were chilly during the campaign, and Thomas rebuffed Grant's idea. He had no intention of attacking until he was assured that Hooker was successfully attacking the enemy's flank.
Really?
Meanwhile, 4th Corps Commander Major General Gordon Granger was nearby, completely absorbed in the activities of a battery of artillery.
Irritated, old Grant asked Thomas to order Granger to take command of his own corps, and now order your troops to advance and take the enemy's first line of rifle pits. He's getting pissed.
Right.
About 3 p.m., Thomas passed the order to Granger, but incredibly, Granger ignored the order and resumed commanding the battery of artillery. He's like, what'd you say? Oh, all right. After a further scolding from Grant, Granger finally issued orders to Wood and Sheridan. Messengers also went to Brigadier Generals Absalom Baird and Richard W. Johnson of Major General John Palmer's 14th Corps, ordering them to move upon hearing the rapid, successive discharge of 6 artillery pieces. When you hear that shit, roll it.
Get over here. Thomas deployed 23,000 men in 4 divisions with brigades in line. From left to right, which was north to south, the divisions of Baird, brigades of Colonel Edward H. Phelps, Colonel Ferdinand Vandiver, and Brigadier General John B. Turchin. Wood had brigades of Brigadier General Samuel Betty, August Willich, and William Babcock Hazen. Sheridan had his brigades of Brigadier General George Wagner, Colonel Charles Garrison Harker, and Colonel Francis Trowbridge Sherman. And Johnson had the brigades of Colonel William L. Stoughton and Brigadier General William Carlin.
Really?
Each brigade consisted of 2 lines, one behind the other, with skirmishers leading the way.
About 20,000 old Rebs were defending the center of the ridge against which Thomas's men marched, overlapped the Union approach on both ends. From right to left, north to south, were Chetham's division, brigades of Brigadier Generals Edward Walthill, John Moore, and John Jackson. Hinman's division, commanded by Brigadier General Patton Anderson, J. Patton Anderson, that is. Brigades of Brigadier Generals Alfred Vaughn, Zachariah Diaz, and Arthur Manigault. You got Breckinridge division, commanded by Brigadier General William Bate. Brigades of Brigadier General Joseph Lewis, Colonel R.C. Taylor, and Brigadier General Jesse Finley. Tyler. And Stewart's division, which brigades of Colonel Randy L. Gibson, Brigadier General Otho Strahl, Brigadier General Marcellus Augustus Stovall, and Colonel James T. Holtzcall.
All right, around 3:40 p.m., the signal guns fired before Baird could brief Turchin. Some regimental officers claimed to get conflicting orders from the same brigadier.
Right.
When asked where he was to stop, Willich told one officer, I don't know. At hell, I expect. Sheridan sent an orderly back to Granger, inquiring whether the objective was the base or the top of the ridge, but the signal guns fired before he got an answer.
Oh, man.
Wagner, Turchin, and Carlin thought they were supposed to carry the ridge top. Most officers were guided only by what the units on either side of them did. Jeez. How could you be so unprepared? Just
dumb. 9,000 Confederates holding the rifle pits at the base of the ridge were also plagued by conflicting orders.
I guess no upper hand here because they're both stupid.
Some were ordered to fire a volley and then retreat. Others were told to hold their ground. Those who stayed to fight were swamped by superior Union numbers. The Union tide was irresistible, with charging men shouting, "Chickamauga! Chickamauga!" Many of the Confederates were captured, while the rest started the 300 to 400 climb to the ridge top in fear of being shot in the back. Jeez. Those who escaped were completely winded by the effort and in no shape to defend themselves for several minutes.
Well, they had to catch your breath.
Right.
100 Confederate cannons lying at the top of the ridge initially hit a few of their enemies during the Union rush.
So stupid.
But once the Union soldiers stopped at the rifle pits, they began to zero in on them, though.
Oh.
The Confederate riflemen also poured in their fire, causing several Union casualties.
Oh, wow.
After several minutes, some Union unit commanders moved their men forward to get out of the worst fire. I would assume that's what you would do.
Right.
Willitch's skirmishers started advancing up the ridge without orders. Deciding that following them was preferable to being massacred in the rifle pits.
You ain't get it.
Willitch gave orders to advance.
You ain't get it.
Although several of his units were already doing so. They said, well, I don't care what you say. I'm getting the hell out of here.
Right.
Well, seeing this, Hazen and Beatty also ordered their first lines up. When Wood reached the rifle pits, the men in the second line begged him to order them up as well.
Right.
And Wood sent them forward. He said, get the hell out of here, boys.
Can we go? Can we go? We go. You can go.
Get out of here.
You may go. Grant's order to halt at the rifle pits at the base of the bridge was misunderstood by far too many of the generals charged with executing it. Some doubted the order because they thought it was absurd to stop an attack at the instant when the attackers would be most vulnerable to fire from the crest and to a counterattack. Others apparently received garbled versions of the order.
So why did he instruct them to stop there in the first place? Or did they just think that's what he said? I don't know.
Wow. While Claiborne from the OREB skillfully made the terrain work for him at Tunnel Hill, Confederate dispositions along the central and southern portions of Missionary Ridge allowed the terrain to work for the attackers. In the final analysis, the strength of the seemingly impregnable Missionary Ridge position turned out to be mostly a bluff.
Of course. Grant was shocked when he saw the Union troops climbing the ridge. He asked first Thomas, then Granger, who had given the orders. Neither general claimed responsibility, but Granger replied, when those fellows get started, all hell can't stop them.
You ain't kidding.
Granger then sent a courier to Wood, allowing him permission to take the ridge top if he thought it was possible. Several messengers went about at this time with differing orders, leading to more confusion.
So dumb. On the far left, Phelps and Van Devere captured the rifle pits and held their position. Having negotiated some rough ground, Turchin's brigade lagged behind. But as soon as his men overran the rifle pits, the mad Russian immediately urged his men up the ridge. Before Baird could send his other two brigades, he received an order to halt. Wagner and Harker's men, they started climbing soon after Woods' brigade. Wagner got halfway up before he received an order that he was to stop at the base of the ridge. He ordered his men to pull back. As they did, they suffered heavy losses from elated Confederate defenders. You dumbasses.
Wagner's brigade suffered more casualties, around 22% than any other brigade in the assault.
Should have just kept on going.
Right. When Wagner and some of Harker's men returned to the rifle pits, they saw that Woods' division on their left and units of their own division on the right were still moving uphill.
Oh, wow.
Disgusted that a rival division was getting ahead, Wagner sent his second line up the ridge. Sheridan soon ordered Harker back up also. To their right, Francis Sherman's brigade faced an entrenched line about half of the way up the ridge and had hard going.
Uh-oh.
On the far right, Johnson's two brigades faced determined resistance at the rifle pits and were slow in starting up the ridge.
Oh, jeez. Strange things are happening. The Confederate line first cracked at Bird's Mill Road at about 5 p.m. One of Willitch's regiment, joined by two of Hazen's, it worked its way within 50 yards of Confederate breastworks. Protected by a roll of ground, they crept closer. Then with a rush, they leapt over the works belonging to Colonel William Tucker's brigade. Surprised, the nearest defenders surrendered or fled for their lives. Alertly, the Union field officers swung their regiments to the right and left and began rolling up the Confederate line. Tucker bravely rallied his men, but this time Willitch and Hazen's men were flooding over the breastworks. He's like, damn, this is it.
Now, since Bragg had not provided for a tactical reserve and the narrow ridgetop left no place for one, his defenses were only a thin crust. And nobody likes thin crusts.
Right.
To seal off the breach, the Southern generals were placed on the horns of a dilemma. When they found Union troops on their flank, they had to pull regiments out of their defense line for a counterattack. This weakened the main line of resistance, just as the Union brigades to their front were swarming up to the crest.
Oh, wow.
Damn, yeah, that's quite the dilemma.
You ain't kidding. One's at the top of the ridge. Hazen swung his brigade south. Confederate lines in this direction were held by Brigadier General Alexander Reynolds' brigade, whose men had to endure a hard climb from the base of the ridge. Hit in front and flank, most of Reynolds' tired men melted away. Continue south. Hazen flanked Colonel R.C. Tyler's brigade of Bates' division out of position, allowing Wagner's brigade to reach the crest. Bates' Florida brigade was soon driven away, allowing Harker's men to reach the top. Damn, it's just falling apart for the old Rebs. According to the diary from a man in the 7th Florida Infantry Regiment, Company K, the Union troops were able to move artillery pieces into place by disguising the guns as ambulances.
Okay. How
Didn't
that
know
would
there
work
was
out,
ambulances. Do they have
on
people
carriages, I'm sure.
Pew, pew.
They would swing like a fireball around. The rebels held their fire, though, falling for the ruse until the guns were uncovered and opened fire. Yeah, so they probably had like wagons that had the medical mark on it or something. Colonel Randall L. Gibson's brigade was defeated by Francis Sherman's men.
Ooh.
Dogged by tough resistance and very steep slopes, Johnson's 2 brigades took the longest climb to the ridge, and Carlin's men finally reached the top around 5:30 p.m.
Damn, dude. Imagine how tired your legs are
It's
like
just stupid.
noodles.
They're like, all right, guys, let's fight tomorrow.
Right.
Seeing that his position was hopeless, Stuart pulled the brigades of Brigadier Generals Otho Strahl and Marcellus Stovall off the ridge.
Oh.
Meanwhile, Willits wheeled to the north and began crushing the flank of Anderson's division. Willits's success assisted Beatty's brigade to get to the top.
Oh, I bet they did. Fantastic. The 2 brigades first drove off Brigadier General Arthur Mangalt's men and continued rolling north. As they came up the ridge, the Union brigades of Turchin, Van der Veer, and Phelps, who was killed near the crest.
Poor guy.
They added their weight to the assault against the Confederate brigades of Brigadier General Zachariah Diaz, Alfred Vaughn, and John Jackson. Some rebel soldiers resisted stubbornly, but many panicked and ran when they realized that the old bluecoats were coming, and they were bearing down on them from the flank. Often the Southern infantry fled. Before the supporting artillerists could escape with their cannons. Oh, come on, guys.
In this manner, Anderson's entire division and Cheatham's left flank brigades of Brigadier Generals Jackson and Moore were routed. The northward Federal advance was only stopped by the stout fighting of Walthall's brigade, and nightfall came. So, more nightfall. Cheatham, Gist, Stevenson, and Claiborne were able to get their divisions away more or less intact.
Okay.
Although the Confederate soldiers were demoralized and chagrined by their defeat.
Oh, geez. Of course they were. That was just a terrible. You guys thought you had the upper ground there.
Yeah.
You didn't have shit. The Army of the Cumberland's ascent of the Missionary Ridge was one of the war's most dramatic events. I can imagine.
There's a movie about that.
It has to be, you would think, right? Military historians Herman Hathaway and Archer Jones, they contend that the Battle of Missionary Ridge was the war's most notable example of a frontal assault succeeding against entrenched defenders holding high ground. Yeah, that never works.
Oh, did here.
Wow. A Union officer remembered that little regard to formation was observed. Each battalion assumed a triangular shape. The colors at the apex was as a color bearer dashes ahead of the line and falls. A comrade grasps a flag. He too falls. Then another picks it up, waves it defiantly, and as if it bearing a charmed life, he advances steadily towards the top.
Yep, you colors fall, next one right to it, you pick it up, run with it. By 6 p.m., the center of Bragg's line had broken completely and fled in panic, requiring the abandonment of Missionary Ridge and a headlong retreat eastward to the South Chickamauga Creek. The sole exception to the panicked flight was Claiborne's command, his division augmented by 2 brigades from another division.
Uh-oh.
As the only command not in complete disarray, it was the last unit to withdraw and form the rear guard of Bragg's army as it retreated east.
Jeez.
Only Sheridan tried to pursue beyond Missionary Ridge, but he finally gave up late that night when he clearly was being supported by neither Granger nor Thomas.
Right.
So he said, I'm not going out here by
He's like,
myself.
wait, they ain't coming.
They're all resting. Screw this.
Yeah. After Major General Joseph Hooker's command left Lookout Mountain around 10 a.m. and moved east, they encountered a significant obstacle. The bridges across Chattanooga Creek, about a mile from Rossville Gap, had been burned by the old Rebs as they withdrew the night before, and the creek was running high. Brigadier General Peter Joseph Osterhaus, he assigned a 70-man pioneer unit to start rebuilding that very bridge, while men of the 27th Missouri created a rickety footbridge and began crossing one by one. Hooker decided to leave his guns and wagons behind so that all of his infantry could cross. But his advance was delayed about 3 hours, and the bulk of his force did not reach Rossville Gap until 3:30 p.m.
Well, meanwhile, Breckinridge was absent while the Union attack wrecked his corps. Worried about his left flank, he rode to the end of his line in the early afternoon. 3:30 p.m., about the time Thomas launched his 4-division attack on Missionary Ridge, Breckinridge visited Stuart's left flank brigade of Colonel James Holtzclaw, whose commander pointed to the southwest where Hooker's men were busily bridging Chattanooga Creek. Concerned about Rossville Gap, which lay undefended beyond his left flank, Breckinridge ordered Holtzclaw to send a couple of regiments to hold that position.
Damn right you better. You got a couple hours to do it.
Well,
Nope, that's too late. By the time Southerners reached the Gap, Osterhaus's division had already marched through. Lieutenant J. Campbell Breckinridge, the general's son, and aide-de-camp, he rode into a group from the 9th Iowa and was captured. Hooker quickly faced his troops to the north, organized a 3-pronged attack. He sent Osterhaus along a trail east of the Missionary Ridge. Cruft he sent onto the ridge itself, and Geary along the western face of the ridge. Holtzclaw from the old Reb side faced his men south and put up a fight. But Cruft and Osterhaus began herding the outnumbered Confederates north along Missionary Ridge.
Get on along now, little sheep. Hearing a tremendous racket to the north, Breckinridge finally rode off to find out what was wrong. As Holtzclaw retreated before Hooker's command, he eventually bumped into Colonel Anson G. McCook's 2nd Ohio of Carlin's brigade, now astride the ridge. Surrounded by superior forces on 4 sides, about 700 of Holtzclaw men surrendered, along with soldiers from the other brigades of Stuart's division.
Right.
Dude, just give up. Get all your guys out of there. What are you doing?
Jeez. During that, right?
Ridge is nothing no more.
Right. It's got to go. During that very night, Bragg ordered his army to withdraw toward Chickamauga Station on the Western Atlantic Railroad, which is the current site of the Lavelle Airfield.
Good man.
And following the day, began retreating from there toward Dalton, Georgia, in 2 columns over 2 routes. The pursuit by Grant was effectively thwarted by Claiborne's rearguard defense at the Battle of Ringgold Gap. Well, look at Claiborne holding back a pursuit by Grant.
Right. Casualties for the Union Army during the battles for Chattanooga, which was Orchard Knob, Lookout Mountain, and Missionary Ridge, amounted at 5,824, which was 753 killed, 4722 wounded, and 349 missing. And that was for the Union of about 56,000 engaged. It's 10%.
Damn.
Confederate casualties were 6,667, 361 killed, 2,160 wounded, and 46 missing, mostly prisoners. Missing or taken prisoner, of about 44,000 for them. It's more than 10%.
Damn, 4,000 missing. Shit.
Well, they were.
Yeah.
It says mostly prisoners, so
Right.
they were all prisoners, taken prisoners. Southern losses may have been higher. Grant claimed 6,142 prisoners. In addition, the Union Army seized 40 cannons, 69 limbers and caissons, and when a chaplain asked General Thomas whether the dead should be sorted and buried by state in the new military cemetery, Thomas replied, "Mix them up. I'm tired of states' rights."
Oh, damn. He did that. He went there. He went there. Dude, that was a...
He was like, it's a myth.
Right. This is a significant loss from the old Confederates here.
Yep, not good for them.
Oh my.
That's one of their main armies.
The Confederate enthusiasm that had risen so high after Chickamauga had been dashed at Chattanooga.
Sure had.
One of the Confederacy's 2 major armies was routed.
Yep.
The Union now held the undisputed control of the state of Tennessee, including Chattanooga, which was the gateway to the lower South. The city became the supply and logistics base for Sherman's 1864 Atlanta campaign, as well as for the Army of Cumberland. And Grant had won his final battle in the West prior to receiving command of all of Union armies in March of 1864. Damn.
That's some bad stuff by the old Confeds, man. They're on the ropes.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe so you never miss out on new episodes of Outlaws and Gunslingers or Battles of the American Civil War, right here on the Bang Dang Network. And don't forget to check out those playlists.